Here we are. What is up, everybody? Welcome to another Friday, another episode of Friday, another edition of the WordPress Friday Hangout. I'm one half of your crew, Brad Williams, along with my esteemed co-host, Mr. Victor Ramirez. Victor, what is up, my man?
Enjoying the uppy downy weather of Philadelphia. It was 70 degrees yesterday, 40 today. I don't know how to dress.
Yes, Monday was beautiful. The next couple of days were freezing. Then it was beautiful, and now it's about to be freezing again. So this is that fake spring they talk about, right? Like you think spring's coming, but nope, it's definitely fake. Don't get your hopes up.
I wish it stayed cold. I got too excited.
Too excited. Well, I got I'm not sure if you're familiar with the CrossFit Open or the CrossFit Games, but it kicked off last week, hot and heavy. So I got the workout number 2 coming up later today, actually. If you're not familiar, the CrossFit Games is essentially a global event of anyone that wants to participate in the CrossFit world. And it's essentially like your annual physical fitness test. So there's 3 workouts. It really challenges you in all different aspects. You have someone sitting there scoring you, checking every rep, making sure you're getting your squat as far as you can and doing what you're supposed to do. And then you log your score and kind of you compete against everybody in your, your age bracket and across the whole globe. So it's kind of fun. As fun as like having a miserable workout can be, but so looking forward to that later. Looking forward to getting over with that later. It's
about the impact, right? Like you're doing, it's just like any kind of training, right? It's you feel great after. I mean, that's for me, like a lot of the weightlifting stuff. It's how do I feel and look, and like when I do basic stuff, I go take the groceries and I'm not sweating.
Tony, man, and you got you're pretty good, pretty strict with your workout routine with I know you row a lot and you got your gym there at your building. So I will give this piece of advice before we kind of jump into the main segment. But my number one advice for just kind of getting over the blues or the funk is to get out there and just exercise, walk, play basketball, run, do anything. Just get a little bit of a sweat. I swear that's my therapy. It really helps me kind of stay centered and leave it all out there in the sweat puddle underneath me and kind of reset. And like you said, you always feel a lot better after. So.
And I'll add to that. It's crazy to think about this. Then when you talk to any therapist, any psychologist, they say, yeah, you could take medications, but we always recommend you combine it with exercise, sleep. And sometimes you're like, all right, that sounds so generic. But this, last March, last January, I got COVID. And I was like, that's it. I'm going to work out every day. I'm going to start eating better and sleeping better. And your mental health is better. You could tell you have better energy. And it seems miserable. I like that mug. And that's the hardest part, getting it done. But then trust me, by the 10th day, you're like, you know what? Getting up every morning and doing me first before doing anything else, it just leads to a better day. And it's so corny, but it really works. I hate it. It really works.
Just go for a walk. It makes such a difference, especially many of us that, work from home. Sometimes we don't leave the house. So just getting some fresh air, some vitamin D, a little bit of sun, it'll go a long way. But let's get into it. We got our first guest of our kind of relaunch here. Excited to bring her on. So hopefully this works. But let's get her on here. We got Laura Byrne joining us. I'm assuming you could hear what we were talking about, but I don't really know. Did you hear anything we just said, Laura?
I did not hear a thing. It was like I was on one of those game shows where they're like, they put you out into the cone of silence and you don't know what's going on.
So when you're coming on or not, but you're here and it works. So
I'm here.
You're our first official guest, Laura. Excited to have you.
Split second before I come on, it's like, oh, it's happening. It's happening.
We don't talk enough at work, like literally every day. We're like, you know what? We should podcast. We should come on the podcast together.
Right? Just in case you're just not sick of me already.
And Laura, you just returned from a big trip overseas for a not so little event, certainly a big event, the first flagship event in Asia, WordCamp Asia. So we'd love to get a quick, high level, review. How did it go?
It definitely looked great. Massive kudos to the organizing team. A couple of web devers were on there, JC and Lax, but just kudos to everybody. It was incredible. It was spectacular. Like honestly, as an attendee who's done tons of flagship camps, whether it's US or EU, like you wouldn't know it was their first time doing a flagship camp. It was like they had been doing this for years. Everything was super smooth. Great presentations. It was really cool to walk the sponsor hall and see people that you don't usually see in US, a lot of sponsors that are a little more Asia based. So that was really cool. Food was awesome. I have to say a very high bar has been set. I don't know that anybody else gets orange duck for lunch at their work.
Wow.
Wow.
I've heard about Thailand. I've heard the food's amazing.
The food was amazing and the desserts were great. No, believe me, nobody was going hungry. That was really spectacular. But yeah, it was great. Such a great diversity of speakers. I mean, very much Asia-based, but there were people like me from around the world there too. And all sorts of topics. But one of the ones that I saw a bunch were a lot of people talking about getting a job in WordPress. Speaking on that topic from people who code, people who don't code. They had an awesome jobs board up. Also lots of people talking about contributing back to the WordPress project. So lots of themes of working with WordPress, whether you're going to be working as a volunteer or working to be paid. That was definitely, I would say, a huge theme amongst folks who were there.
Hey, that's a really great transition right into our show today. I mean, first, it did sound like an amazing event at WordCamp Asia. I definitely had some FOMO. I think many of us did, just classic WordCamp FOMO, but the fact that it was the first one in Asia, I think made it feel a little bit different from the outside looking in, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, by all accounts, it looks like it was an amazing event. I can't wait to see some of the presentations, recordings. I would imagine they'll show up on WordPress.tv sometime in the near future. So
Yeah.
Also in my brain, because 2020, now we're in 2020 part 3, it's all a blur. I thought WordCamp Asia happened because and that's what I thought was so cool about it.
It almost happened, right?
But also I think that sometimes, the other side of the hemisphere in Western, tech events and whatever, we forget how many great people are out there. And it's also hard for them to travel to this side of the hemisphere.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very cool that that's now a thing, because now, they showed they can do it. And hey, now everyone else can be excited. Now, listen, I actually wasn't doubting they could do it. I'm more like, it looked like such a good time. I'm going to make sure I get a ticket, or at least get, and get over there next time. And it's really exciting. And to me, there's so many great people on that side of the hemisphere that sometimes can't join us on these kind of things, the time differences, whatever. So it's probably really exciting and very different and refreshing. So that's really cool.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no, a couple of you, I got to meet Leslie from Newsletter Glue, who I've only ever interacted before on Twitter and Slack. She's based over
awesome.
there in Asia. Different companies. I know for some websites that I build personally, I use stackable blocks because I don't code, and they provide me a great resource. And they had a booth there at WordCamp Asia. So it was really cool just to meet, people I would absolutely never get to meet in person otherwise, zero chance. So
you met some
great.
WDSers that I have not met yet. So
yeah, that was actually
JC and Lax, and
so here's the challenge. Zoom, Victor, as you're saying, we're all here on Zoom for 3 years, right? I mean, we're on Zoom a lot, but we haven't met anybody. So people from being on Zoom, you have no idea how tall they are. You don't know where to look. So I mean, I kind of
have no idea that Victor's 6'8" just by looking at him.
There you go.
He's a tall guy.
Yeah. Well, I'm
a giant.
Right.
Don't stand up, Victor.
So here's the funny thing, Brad, which you may find weird. I've from our team, Asher, I've only really interacted with him in Slack on our team. So I didn't really know who to look for. And I turn around, I hear, hello, Laura. And I turn around and I'm like, oh, wow, you're tall.
Who's this giant?
I had no idea. And he has such an incredible outgoing personality, which when you're only really interacting somebody briefly, because he's not on my pod at work. So we have very brief encounters. I wouldn't have known what an incredible personality he has. So it was really awesome meeting so many people, face to face. It was awesome.
Yeah. So sounds like an awesome event, as I'm trying to juggle the chat room and actually hosting a show at the same time. We'll get there, people. We'll get there. This is only episode 2.
Brad.
Rolling into it, though, you know what? Let's talk about it. One of the great things about a WordCamp is networking and finding a job, right? Yep. And so the craziest thing to me, and so we can roll into it. There's so many, and so for some people who don't know, I actually mentor, and I used to do it a lot before the pandemic. I mentored 160 high school kids to code in 2016. Since then, those kids are now, grown men, ages 18 to 22, and they're looking for their first job. But then also their friends come to me and say, hey, can you kind of let me know how to find a job? And again, before the pandemic, I would always say, hey, go to an event. And I had this one mentee who, and even also outside of teaching kids to code, I mentored at Thinkful sometimes. I had a young woman, she was a mentee of mine, and she was like, Victor, I haven't got a job in 6 months. And I said, Nikki, have you been coding? And she goes, no, I said I didn't get a job. And I said, Nikki, I asked if you've been coding, not if you got a job. And so then I just met with her once and I said, look, you're in Atlanta. And this is before MailChimp was acquired, mind you. I was like, MailChimp's there, all these big companies there. And I sent her to WordCamp. She networked a little, got involved. I think it was either Black Girls Code, Girls Who Code. Within a month, she had a job just from going to WordCamp Atlanta, introducing her to people, getting her to invited to things. And that's like one way to get a job. So when I do meet with mentees, I'm like, you have to hit the ground from multiple angles. Hit your connections, hit a network, hit events, and then also still the LinkedIn and job applications, which is the boring part. And we could talk about that later, gaming that algorithm. But that's like one way to look at getting a job and meeting people that can get you that job.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and it does. And it was interesting being there because, I mean, they had a couple of really great opportunities. One of which there's this huge jobs board. It was 3 whiteboards long of people who were posting not only, hi, here's what I can bring to the table looking for work. And then conversely, you know, people who are saying, hey, we have employment opportunities at the company I worked for. So, you know, I had put up some, you know, web dev was hiring for some engineering roles. So I had that put up, but I was also seeing people saying, hey, this is what I offer. So as you were a company writing something down, you could also see somebody else who had presented themselves there and you're like, oh, I should contact that person. Like, so definitely there was opportunity there like that. And there were a couple of us. Yeah. And then there were a bunch of us at WordCamp Asia who were speaking in the space of how to get a job in the WordPress ecosystem or how to get a job in tech. Just a couple of people right off the top of my head who were talking about that. It was myself, Ali Niemans, Carol Olinger, Michelle Ames. And there's a lot of different ways. I think you're right, Victor. There's not one right path to go about it. It really depends. And frankly, you probably should diversify your efforts, right? For the biggest bang for your buck, you should probably go at it a bunch of different ways.
And put yourself out there.
Yeah, like networking, like I will tell you, Victor, the way that you're just talking about, like networking, going to events, Michelle Frechette, that is absolutely how she got hired by the Stellar WP team, was she went networking at WordCamps and talking to different people and saying, what do you have? This is who I am. And they'd seen her present. And that's how she got picked up a couple of years ago at Stellar WP. For a while, what I was ending up doing is I went to, I figured out who was sponsoring the big flagship WordCamps, US, EU, Asia, and they all have sponsors. So I went down all the sponsors of the flagship camps, hit all their careers pages to see what kind of openings they had, or check them out to see like company culture. Like sometimes it's the right fit, you know, and I would look and I'm like, okay, this isn't probably the best fit for me, even if they have an opening. And I found out about it that way. You know, and then there's other things too. A lot of people were hyping, you know, Post Status is a great place to find a job. Another one is just even networking online, networking on Twitter. I mean, ultimately, I ended up at WebDev because I saw Jody Richelli at the time tweeting about it. And I asked her, I was like, hey, can I chat with you about what it looks like to work at WebDev? So there's all sorts of different ways you can, you know, find your path in, I would say, for sure.
Yeah, let's dig into the networking part a little bit, because I think that's you know, it may be an obvious one to some people and may not be. It also is, for many people, is a very tough one, you know. So the idea of going to an event and talking to people you don't know is terrifying to many people. And I get it, right? Like, it's not my specialty either. People think I'm an extrovert. I'm actually not. I'm probably a mix of extra, intra. If you release me on an exhibit hall and say, go talk to everybody, I'm not going to do well. It's not my specialty. It's not what I do, right? But there are some people who are excellent at that. They'll talk to anybody about anything. So I love the idea of, you know, going to WordCamps. Certainly start with meetups, the local meetups, right? Because that is a great way to dip your toe into your local WordPress community, your local tech community, and start making some connections. And even if you're just attending, you're not up there presenting, you're not shaking everybody's hand, even just being present can help and start to get you more comfortable, right? Like, it might take some time for you to come out of your shell and get a little bit more involved. But from my experience with local meetups, and certainly in open source and WordPress, I mean, the reason why this community is so great is because we are all of the open source mentality. We all want to help each other, right? Everybody is insanely friendly in this community and very welcoming, regardless if you're Matt Mullenweg all the way down to, someone who
Yeah.
just got into this into WordPress. Like everybody's very open and wants to help each other. So those local communities, I think, are an absolute great place to start. And especially as events are starting to kind of come back, and especially local events, meetups. It doesn't even have to be WordPress related, maybe local tech events. Victor and I are here in Philly. Laura, you're just outside of New York City. Obviously, both, I mean, we're near big cities, but we have amazing tech scenes in these two cities,
Yeah.
right? And most big cities have a tech scene of some sort that you can start getting involved with and learning. Then maybe if you're not sure where you want to go or what you want to do, that can maybe even help you, right? To kind of home in on that. But meetups, WordCamps, events, I mean, I love that. Even if you're not great at networking, sometimes you got to put yourself out there a little bit more, get a little bit uncomfortable to make some things happen.
I think another thing too, I'll add is don't think of it as networking. So many people go, oh, networking, ew. Are you one of those networkers? Listen, I'm a very social person. When I go to WordPress events, the last thing I want to talk about is WordPress. Most of the people that come up to me and they ask me about WordPress, I'm like, cool, man. You want to just come to my talk? Like we can like catch up. Like I do a webinar. Do you like food? Do you like this? What's about Atlanta? And I'm in Atlanta. I'm like, where are the yellow pepper wings, man? What's that deal? What's with these things? What's cool to go to? What's this? And to be honest, that leaves a better impression on me. And I've had that experience as well, just going and also, so, and Allie, so there's a person named Allie Lyons she works with Web Dev Studios now. Allie used to work with me. And Allie has a really interesting story. She used to work in retail sales of wine. And then she came to a meetup and a dev boot camp had kind of run off with their money. And by the way, that happens. So everyone, make sure, buyer beware sometimes of those boot camps. And she said, hey, I'm trying to turn things around. Can I if I come to the meetup, can you help me find a job? And I said, you know what? If you come and you kind of volunteer and do help desk, I'd love to help you find a job. She just came to 4 help desks. And then I was like throwing everyone at her. Eventually I hired her, giving her stuff. And so if you show up, she didn't show up saying, can you give me a job? Even if I could, I can't just give someone a job the first day I meet them, right? So and the other thing too, I think a lot of people forget when they don't have a job, they're like, well, I don't have a job right now. Can't be going to meetups. First of all, look, being unemployed can be a mental tax, right? And so what Brad just said before, I think in the beginning of the call, if everyone, Laura, you weren't here yet, getting a workout in, going out with friends, taking care of yourself. That's what these meetups can help, because you're going to meet other people who might either be commiserating or celebrating. Hey, I just got a job and these guys are hiring and I like you. You've been at every meetup, you've been showing up, you've been trying. And so just making sure to stay active, even though you are unemployed, right? And that's a really big thing. And so don't go to these meetups and events with like, I need a job, because you're going to stress yourself out.
It's just karma, right? You're just hanging out. You're getting to know people.
Right.
But do say you're for hire. Don't not say that. Be like, I'm looking for a job, but I'm also here to hang out.
Right. Yeah. No, and I think that's right about the karma. Like just like work at meetups, be friendly, be active. I think the karma is a good word too, because you want to make that great impression. And I think just chatting and networking is great, because word of mouth travels so fast. There were series of companies that have done layoffs, right? And there are different people out there looking for jobs. And the thing is that people remember what their experience is with you. Were you the person who was incredibly helpful? Were you the person who was a cheerleader? Were you the person who, you were working at a meetup or a WordCamp and they volunteered to say, hey, what do you need done? Maybe it's not the most glamorous job, but I'm here to help you. Like you remember that stuff. And then at the same time, conversely, if somebody's maybe not so great, like you remember that too, right? So I think that karma and that, it's networking, but it's just being a really nice person. I mean, I think Brad, that's what you said too, about this is such a great community. Yeah. People remember, who goes that extra mile and who does that. And then you're really happy to help them. Like people are really happy to point people in the right direction or say, yeah, I'm hiring, or here's who you should talk to. Like that's definitely.
Yeah. I mean, I remember at the early days of web dev, we would go to, I would go to WordCamps, with our group, we're talking maybe 10 or less people at the company at the time. And I would go there with a specific purpose of, I want to land, 2 jobs or 2 new clients. Right. Mm-hmm. And I very quickly realized that's not how it's going to happen. Right. You're not going to walk into WordCamp and it might. Right. But that shouldn't be the expectation, is you got to walk into WordCamp and walk out with a job or walk out with new clients. Right. I quickly learned, like, just being present, just hanging out, sharing knowledge, learning, paying it forward where I can, like that stuff does pay off over time, whether it's job hunting, whether it's, trying to get clients into web dev or whatever it might be, putting it out there, many times
Yeah.
can come back and help you. It's why we always find anytime we're passing on a project for whatever reason, we refer them to other companies that we think can help them, that we trust, because I don't want to just say, nope, good luck. I want to say, no, but you should talk to these companies. We trust them. They know what they're doing. They're very good. And you know what? They're always so thankful. And sometimes a year, 2 years, 5 years, they come back.
Yep.
And they say, you did a solid for me. Now I work somewhere else and we have budget. Let's talk. You know? So putting good karma out there is great. I'd love to kind of talk about or start throwing out, Victor, you got a point I think you want to make before we.
No, I was going to say it related to that. The other side of the meetup, karma pays off. If you do meetups, and not to pimp, WPNYC, but we record all our meetups and it goes right on YouTube. That will forever be an SEO in perpetuity. And so now I have people that just search for like New York and WordPress. Every single job I've gotten has just been my interviews so I'm currently at Sotheby's. It was 2 hours of interviews. And I said, do we need any more? And they said, no, we watched all your YouTube videos. Like, we already know how you think. And I was like, okay. And, so if you could speak at meetups and that meetup post to YouTube, that's a win for your resume and your networking as well.
Yeah.
That's
a great transition. Let's talk about kind of, building up your resume, putting things out there. What can you do when you're looking for a job? To your point, Victor, have you been coding? Well, no, I don't have a job. Have you been coding? Like, I don't want someone to apply and I go look at their GitHub and they've been out of work for 2 months and there was zero activity for 2 months.
And it doesn't have to be an insane amount of activity, just like a little bit of because remember, we would interview people at, Brad and I have worked together at large organizations. And at some of those organizations, I've been the person in charge of screening the WordPress people. And nothing drives me crazier. Gutenberg had been out for a year. And I'd go, what do you think of Gutenberg? I haven't tried it yet. You mean you don't know how to turn on local WP and click start? Like, come on, man, play a little bit, have a little bit of curiosity.
And that's it. The curiosity, it shows drive to learn. It shows that they're passionate about technology, because if you're truly passionate about technology, you always want to be learning because you have to, or it will pass you. Right. So that passion and that drive to learn is generally the number one thing I'm looking for. Yes, I need to know that where your skill level's at, but even if you're not where we need you to be, I want to see that you have that passion to get where we go. If we help you get there through training, through guidance from your leadership team and other developers, right? So it shows that passion that, hey, I want to keep learning, even though I'm in between jobs right now.
And you don't have to be a person who codes. Like, I don't code. I always joke around. I know just enough HTML and CSS to be dangerous, which means you don't want me doing those things. I mean, I can, but you really don't want me to. But as you said, Victor, like Gutenberg, I've been working in WordPress content since 2006, which makes me an early adopter ahead of most people. But I got into Gutenberg. I tried it at first when it was very beta, wasn't happy, but I came back to it. I got to be very, very good at it. I can create content in Gutenberg so quickly. I have an incredible knowledge of what all the blocks do, where they started, where they are now. I know exactly where those are. I have a really good working knowledge of plugins and which plugins work for a situation and don't work for a situation. None of that has to do with code whatsoever. I've also dealt with a lot of page builders, so I know how a page builder stacks up against Gutenberg from a user perspective. I'm in sales. A lot of times I'm not dealing with a tech person, I'm dealing with the marketing person. I mean, they're happy that the code is stable, but realistically, they don't care. They want you to talk usability. What's my user experience? And that's something that I can talk to. But the same thing applied. I didn't just sit there and go, oh, I'm just going to stay in Classic Editor forever. I got really curious.
Continue to grow your skill set.
I got in there and it was just like, I'm gonna learn this, and I'm also gonna learn how to teach this to somebody. So
and I love the point of not coding, because that's something I'm always kind of banging that drum when we talk about contributing to WordPress, because I think the default is, oh, you're talking about writing code. No, right? What we're doing right now is contributing to WordPress. The entire company of Web Dev Studios is participating in Five for the Future today. Yeah, they're all contributing to WordPress all day long today. And Laura and myself are spending this hour contributing by talking about jobs and community and on this show. So tons of different ways to kind of put yourself out there, continue to learn. I'd love to show off our friend of the show, Matt Medeiros, put out a video. So this is another live test. We're going to see if this works. So I'm about to share a video on YouTube, and hopefully you hear it and not just see it. I won't play the whole thing, but I think this is clever what he did when he was in between jobs, and shortly after, he got a great position, and now he's fully employed again. So let's see if I can make this work. I love live demos with sound. Let's go. All right, Matt, tell us what you got here.
Hey, it's Matt. I lost my job last week and I'm looking for something new. I've been covering WordPress now for over a decade, both in the news, business, community side of things. I ran a digital agency for over a decade, worked at multiple web hosts, and also worked at a podcast hosting company most recently. And I know the podcast and audio industry really well. I have an extremely strong understanding of WordPress, the podcast industry, sales and marketing, and connecting users with the content and messaging of a brand, really working with the sales and marketing teams to create engaging content that allows users to see value in either purchasing, signing up, or at least trialing.
Okay, he's not a sponsor, so we won't do the whole thing, but hopefully you heard that.
Matt, write a check.
Question, did that work?
Yeah, no, yeah, that looked great.
Awesome.
I mean, that looked great, but I
like,
mean,
how cool is that? So Matt put out this video about a month ago when he was laid off, unfortunately. He's had 2,000 views. He's already landed another job, and he just put together this 1 minute-ish video, but here's my skill set. Here's what I can do. You know, and Matt has a big name in the community, so this isn't a surprise to any of us. We know Matt's very talented and does a lot. But man, I love this, especially from for non-developers or really anybody. Just a quick little video. What do you do? What's your passion? What's your drive? And start sharing.
Well, also, I have to share something. I'm a deep student of psychology and like subconscious things. I'm going to get a little weird here, right? Well, a lot of people don't realize, and when the world went remote, in my opinion, WordPress people were better prepared. One of the most frustrating things for me when the pandemic started, it was January, like 2019, February. And so I was at the Knot Worldwide and I was told I would be remote, but it was given as a gift to get me to work for them, right? And everyone else was local. They didn't know how to use headphones. I had people like with their laptop on speakerphone with the kids running around. I'm like, look, I don't mind kids. Like, that's not the problem. The problem is I need you to go get headphones. And you had people who didn't have a set of headphones. You had people who, they'd literally be having the laptop and carrying it around, not realizing it's bumping against things and banging in my ear, right? And also, like
cameras,
they're like,
you couldn't even buy that stuff. Remember, they're out of
yeah, right.
They're talking like this and I can't hear them and they don't understand. Whereas what he is also communicating here is, I understand how to look good on video. I'm professional. I know how to because if you're going for an agency and your video shows you in a bathroom, dude, I mean, I know that sounds weird, but I've seen adults in an interview video, like literally like on a garbage street. I'm like, dude, you couldn't move the camera so that the garbage wasn't there.
Or blur your background. Come on.
Blur your background. or like, don't eat your lunch as you're interviewing. Like, yeah, it's common sense.
And he's giving,
like that, right?
And the other thing too, with remote, I know we all are comfortable with remote, but I remember I had VPs who were like, hey, could you turn your camera on? Because they just didn't have the trust that we were actually working, right? And I think that's changing a little bit, but there's still some camera on people. And so you're just letting them know, I'm a person, I am who I am. And then also I can communicate, I'm easy to talk to. So right there, and again, code aside, because I know that's not usually what people look for with coders, but that could be a marketing sales. Oh, this person's going to run our webinars. They know how to post on YouTube. The audio quality is good. The video quality is great. This guy might be great for our webinars. And if you don't have that and you're applying for a webinar job, how do I know that you even know how to do this stuff? Right?
Yeah. It's just clear. He's well-spoken. He's articulate. He knows, like I said, all the things. It becomes like a lot of those intangibles. It's like,
it's his demo.
People end up calling them, which I think is really bad a lot of times. People end up calling them soft skills. I gotta tell you, those soft skills are hard skills because you need them. You don't have them. I don't care how brilliant you are at the rest of your job. You're not, it's not going to work, right? So I think almost calling them soft skills, even though I know that's the name, is really doing a disservice to what kind of those skills
Imagine
are.
a senior lead level developer, an engineer that clearly has the development chops, but then they have a video out that shows not only that, but they have those soft skills you're talking about. They're able to communicate. They're able to talk to clients. They're able to take a really complex topic and break it down like I'm 5 so I can understand it. Those are massively important skills for an engineer, and many engineers don't have them. It doesn't mean you have to have them, but there's a very big difference between the engineers and developers that have them and don't, in terms of, hireability and how they may or may not fit. Again, this could be difficult for some people because it is kind of putting yourself out there, but it's less, I think in my mind, less intimidating than walking into a room, networking and shaking hands. It's you and your camera in your own private house, your room, whatever. You can have your space, put together a quick video and only release it when you're happy with it. So you can really edit that experience and make sure you're happy with what you're putting out there. But again, a great idea, I think, is, get clever, use the tools.
Yeah. The other thing I say too is I see this every now and then. I'm like, oh, it's like attention to detail, right? Because like no matter what your job is, whether you're in code, whether you're not coding, like details and paying attention to details is important, right? It's a life skill. So sometimes I'll see people and they'll just do this sort of like mass email, and you can tell it's the same email that went to like 37 other people. And it's like their resumes attached and they've just hit whatever the contact page is on a website, right? And it's like, hi, I want a job. Here's who I am. And it's like, people should probably like do a little more research. Like, you know, companies have careers pages. There's probably a process. They may ask you a specific question. They may ask you to do a specific thing. Like make sure whatever time you're spending is valuable time, right? Like just don't do like a mass email, like take a little more time and look and see, you know, you can reach out to somebody on LinkedIn. You can, you know, contact, you know, hone it. Like, I know you can be a little generic on how you approach things, but definitely paying a little more attention to detail and, you know, make a comment about the company when you contact them. So they know that you're not just doing the same blanket email to every person, like make it a little more personal. And that, again, that gets you noticed. Make sure you're following a process and, you know, make sure people know you care. That I think that makes you stand out as well.
So that, I don't know, Brad, if you had another thing you wanted to bring up, but that's actually interesting that you say that, Laura. And this is one of the number one things. And by the way, this is like proof in the pudding. Before I give people advice, I like to give I help a couple of friends out. I've had friends double, triple their salaries and move to different jobs by doing this hack I'm going to give you. By using generic language for every single application, what you may not realize is you're actually getting kicked out of certain systems. So when you apply to a job at Google or Amazon, it is not a human being. They're usually using a machine, an algorithm, and you don't know that algorithm. But I can tell you that, for example, Google, less is more. If you're specialized in Go and backend databases and apply. But then if you start putting in React, all this other stuff, it looks bad because they're like, oh, this person's too dynamic, right? When you're applying to somewhere like a web, and maybe not web dev studios, but like an agency that needs more dynamic people, it's okay to put Go and backend, but also say, I also do some React, et cetera, right? That also translates to the jobs. When LinkedIn is 50% or even 60% of the job advertising market. And so most HR teams, they're not going to go and write a custom job description per platform. Indeed, Glassdoor, all these other ones, they're literally getting copy and pasted. So if you go to the LinkedIn job that you're looking for and rewrite your resume with the keywords that it uses. So for example, you say worked on old software. If it doesn't say that in the resume, the job description, it says legacy software systems, then change it worked on legacy software. Because sometimes we use.
Are you SEO in your resume? Sounds like you're SEO in your resume.
But
that's what it is.
What it is.
It is, right? That's cool.
It is. Yeah, it is. And so I met this young woman. She was working on ASP.NET, right? And they had her convinced that she was a conversion engineer. And I was like, what is that? And she was like, well, and it was literally, she was doing analytics. And I said, okay, and then here's the other side of that. You can take those job descriptions, rewrite your resume or your application using those keywords. But now here's a better one. You have the job title of, and there's something called a data analyst. And so a data analyst in New York gets paid between 60 and 100, but a data analyst has don't search by title, search by skill. So I can go in, and I know as an SEO person, which salary 50 to 100, I can go into LinkedIn and type in BigQuery. Now, because I did SEO with BigQuery, like I could do a scrape, pull in a BigQuery, analyze the website. For anyone that knows, that's how you use BigQuery, which is a data warehouse system. But because now I know BigQuery, instead of looking for jobs, I search for jobs and I type the word BigQuery, and it gives you back jobs that use BigQuery. And so I had this person, she was a data analyst, and I said, put in BigQuery. And then there was a job for like technical program manager with expert. And so she looked at it and the skills were BigQuery, Data Studio, scraping, this. And she goes, wait a minute, I do all of this. I go, right. And this job pays $180,000 a year. And she was like, I didn't even know I could have that title. So don't just search by title, use keywords. And then that way too, also in your LinkedIn, get it filled in. And then the last thing about that, LinkedIn relies on keyword density. So don't just update your last job. If you did a little bit of SEO in a job 10 years ago, put it there, and the LinkedIn algorithm counts that as experience. So if you had a job you worked 10 years ago, and even if you just updated a headline tag, put SEO specialist or SEO modification, whatever keyword is for that job. And so now when like I as a link, and this is where the premium LinkedIn algorithm comes in, recruiters put their stuff in and LinkedIn goes, here's the right people.
Right.
Every single job I've gotten in my life, Wall Street Journal to the Not Worldwide to here, and then all the consultations I've done in between have been from LinkedIn or Google. People searching WordPress expert NYC, analytics expert, whatever. And that's I wish networking got me a job. Networking more gets me like consulting, but all my jobs have been through LinkedIn SEO doing that exact strategy.
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn is a requirement. If you're not on there, you need to get on there.
Yeah.
Even just to keep your resume on there and keep your job history updated.
Polish it up.
It's where employers go. Everybody that applies at our company and companies I know, they're checking your social, and they're definitely checking LinkedIn because it's a good representation of your work history. And what's out there. So it's important to have it, important to keep it updated. I even keep mine updated, even though I'm not, I've been doing this 15 years. I'm not looking for a job, but guess what? It's good to have it updated. So if clients, maybe employees that want to join my company, look at my profile, it's correct and it's accurate to where I'm at today and what I've done. So,
well, and that's true too. I think
Jeff
Brad,
just asked,
an interesting point. You interview, applicants are interviewing their employer as much as, the other way around. So that's really a key part too. Like if I'm looking for a job somewhere, I would like to know that the CEO is out there on LinkedIn. I can look in what that CEO's experience are, or the person who's going to be interviewing me. What does it look like? If it looks like it's updated and they care, all right, I'm more interested in your company. Same thing with your jobs page. Like how much time did you take putting out a careers page? I'll give you one that I think is interesting, because people will, to your point, Victor, have like those wonky titles. And I'm like, I don't know what this means.
like
But if they put out
automatic.
Oh, yes. I was a technical account manager for Automatic. Good luck if you know what that means.
What does support czar mean?
It doesn't mean, it's not, I think that does a disservice, number one. The other one too, and this is a biggie, and I like that WebDev does this. We put up salary ranges. If a company doesn't put up a salary range, statistically, if you want to hire women, you're not going to, because we want to know we can pay our rent, we can put food on the table. And if that's not there, it instantaneously telegraphs one of two things. Either you're cheap and you're paying below market, or I'm shady because I think I can lowball people who come in the door and they won't know what I'm paying. So I was like, put yourself out there and put yourself out there authentically and honestly, and build that trust in people to want to work with you. If
and that's not even the norm in WordPress,
that's fine.
Salaries.
Maybe people will want it, but don't be shady about it, because otherwise people are like, nope, not worth my time, going somewhere else.
There's not,
Laura,
I look at job posts out there because I know the push for that and why people want to see it. And we had internal conversations whether we should put it or not. And we do now. So, but I still look at job posts and I'm like, almost nobody does it in the WordPress world. You can look at other products.
Diversify. I'm telling you, all the women are going somewhere else because of those two things.
Colorado and California require it. And now I actually find it deceptive because, by the way, to avoid posting salary, that means you actively have to try not to hire people in Colorado and California. That's what they're doing to avoid the salary, because it's a legal requirement.
Right.
Yeah, this is one of the new challenges of this day and age is statism, which nobody really talks about. But it's a true thing, right? Like as an employer, I know there's certain states I would never hire in. It's not public, but I know what they are. We know what they are because of some of the laws they have on the books. Like Texas is a great example. If you are a distributed company, you have one remote employee in Texas, you now have an office and you have to pay taxes for every client that you have in Texas.
Which makes no sense. Texas is supposed to be bigger and better, I thought, about everything. And then when I heard
it's like, if I don't have any employees there, why would I hire one when then I immediately have to start charging tax to all these clients that are in Texas? So something to think about. But anyway, I don't get too sidetracked on the hiring side. We want to get people to find jobs, right? So let's talk about we got a little bit of time. I like to talk about communities online, where people can go get more involved. We talk about kind of events, local and even online, but let's talk about some online communities where people can maybe get involved if they're not already. And I'll kick it off with the first one. If you guys have some thoughts too, I think Post Status is probably one of the more obvious ones. It's really a professional, it's poststatus.com. It's an online professional network of WordPress professionals on there. And Corey Miller actually put out a tweet, and I'll retweet it under the WP Friday hashtag, that if you're not a member, because I think it's $100 a year.
something like that.
If you're not a member and you've recently been laid off, he will give you a free Pro Plus membership so that you can get involved. You can join for free and you can start networking. There's a very active Slack instance with multiple channels on different topics for hiring, for agencies, for marketing, for just business or club chat or whatever. But really great place to kind of get involved with professionals, top to bottom on WordPress. And Corey's going to help you get in there for free if you haven't already. So check WP Friday hashtag. I'll tweet that out right now. But where are some other places people can go and, connect, network, look for job openings?
I mean, so I would say the Facebook groups, just so everyone, I would just say buyer beware is also the one thing is sometimes online, people are not as kind. So I will say there's Facebook Advanced WordPress group. Don't go into these groups saying, I need a job. I need a job. Do go and look at the group, statement on Facebook. But
Yep.
Facebook, for all its warts, is still great. WP All Import has a new group they just started, and they're looking for data because they're trying, and I was very interested in that. Advanced WordPress is a great group. My Web Audit is a great group, which is Clifford Almeida. He has a great, and I think some of those they have an agency wing. So Go WP, they do services like service contracts, but they want agencies and freelancers to join because their idea is, look, we're not trying to take your job. We're trying to help you delegate the small stuff. But as a higher level engineer, there are things in those groups. And even I was speaking to, and I forgot the I'm so sorry, the owner of Pro Memberships, I think it is, the plugin. The owner, I think Jason.
Paid membership pro.
Jason. And Jason also said, like, hey, in his forum, sometimes people have something that goes beyond the scope of the plugin. And so go to those groups and hey, if you troubleshoot, I've had that, and it's almost the Gary V method. You could do this in those Facebook groups. If you answer a lot of questions, jump in, and if you have the knowledge, if you're bored sitting around, like waiting for a job, put Facebook on your phone and get in there. And that happened to me. I've been in Facebook groups and had people, I got a big data contract. I belong to a data group, and the group was like, someone posted a really complex question and I was like, oh no, that's actually really easy, guys. And I gave an example and they're like, can we hire you? And it led, and so going in those groups and just going and answering questions, kind of helping out, and people will notice you. And it's a great way to it's also kind of a mini interview because you're having to you can't just say to someone, and this is how you do it. You're writing really great and when I interview people, I don't ask for their Git to look at how much they committed. I look for their Git to see how they comment and communicate with people. And so in the Facebook as well, it's an opportunity to demonstrate I give really well thought out answers. And if you apply for a CSR, a customer service position, they can go and look at that and go, wow, look at how he already is so helpful. We just got to pay him to do the same thing, pay him or her to do the same thing. And that's so cool.
That's actually a really good point, Victor, because like that's actually also kind of how I stay up to date knowledge. Like just to shout out a couple of groups, like the Yoast SEO group was great. I'm in there all the time, like asking questions, answering questions. The Advanced WordPress group that you mentioned, Lifter LMS has an amazing group, and it's the same kind of thing.
Oh, Lifter's great. Yep, Lifter too.
You see people like interacting and what have you. That's actually how I ended up with the job at Automatic at one point. Is I was in the Advanced WordPress group. I was troubleshooting an SEO situation for a client. And I had posted into a couple of groups. I was like, here's the situation. Here's what I think is really the right answer. Anybody else have some more experience with this? And it was really interesting. What happened, as you mentioned, sometimes in those groups, people are not so kind. Other times they're great. So I posted a question and I had a couple of folks who, were in love with the sound of their own voice. And I was a little snarky back with some of them. And then I said, no, once more, if you actually read what I wrote rather than what you wanted me to wrote, sorry, you are the weakest link. Back to my point.
Wait. Keep online.
And I just redirected it. Right. And I was like, I'm not having it. I was just being snarky with the people who were jerks, and I was engaging the people who were giving me good information. And even one I remembered, he goes, oh, you can't argue with clients. You're going to lose clients that way, sweetheart. I said, first of all, my name isn't sweetheart. Second of all, I'm doing this longer than you. So moving on, and I did it. So at the end of it, I figured out my thing, but here's what happened. George Stefanis, who worked at Automatic, watched what was going on in that thread. And he was like, you really know what you're doing with this. I was like, yeah. He's like, remind me again, what is it that you do? And I said, well, here's what I do. Here's what I want to do. He's like, we got an opening at Automatic on my team. You want to apply? And I'm like, As a matter of fact, I do. So it's, like I said, sometimes
putting yourself out
it's
there, not
I'm
expecting
putting myself
anything,
out there. I wasn't
trying to help, and then
specifically
good things
out in
come.
the advanced WordPress group that day,
Mhm.
specifically looking for a job. I was specifically looking
Yep.
to help a client with a unique SEO situation, but I managed to get noticed by how I was troubleshooting like my knowledge need, and also how I was kind of, dealing with folks who were a little cantankerous, and I was dealing with them with some sarcastic humor. And George was like, "This is great. This is how you have to deal with people sometimes."
I mean, you do, right? So, I mean,
know?
any community, hopefully you want to find a community that's has good moderation and good people in charge, right? Because then if there are bad actors, they're going to hopefully get them out quickly.
Right.
So, I mean, helping people, answering, WordPress.org support forums, great place to jump into and start helping. I mean, I remember back pre-Slack days when WordPress was all organized via IRC. One of our early hires, Michael Beckwith, was someone that I knew through IRC, and I just saw him helping support so many different people and what we were doing. And we needed that help, and we ended up hiring him, and now he's been here 10 years. So
he's still around.
It's really just like going back to one of our original points, just kind of putting yourself out there, helping people, not really expecting a direct return from it other than good karma, and most likely it will return, so.
And even people remember years later, like that's the thing too. It's not like, do it and consistently do it. Don't just do it because you need a job right now. Like do it and consistently do it. I've had people reference talks that I've given at WordPress events years later. People remember stuff, so definitely do it no matter what. It's worth it.
How do we feel about Twitter these days for job hunting and searching? I mean, I know Twitter's in this weird spot right now, right? It's one reason we kind of jumped ship, because it's just getting very unreliable with Twitter Spaces and whether it's going to be here today or tomorrow. So do we still feel like Twitter is a good spot for kind of putting yourself out there, networking, getting involved, looking for jobs, or are people in other areas now?
I think Twitter is still good if you can find the niche and communicate with that niche. But the one thing I will say is, even like in basic conversations now, there's so much spam happening now. It's kind of like, and so I feel if you still can so this kind of goes back to like the Google SEO stuff we're talking about. I still think it's good if you can talk about WordPress on Twitter. So for example, if you Google Victor Ramirez WordPress, my WordPress tweets sometimes show up. Now I'm running this thing where it deletes them after 30 days because I just don't want my archive up there. But it used to be where if you Googled Victor Ramirez WordPress, and someone here had said, and this kind of like is tying them all together. Someone here said, oh, my job title's kind of, job titles are a curse, right? For everyone here, your boss has no legal standing to confirm your job title. So when I apply, so at Sotheby's, they gave me the title of analytics manager. They wanted to call me analytics engineer, and I said, look, like you're not giving me lead director or anything, and you're putting my career on backtrack, right? So they gave me analytics manager, but at my previous role, like you can change your you can say to your boss, like, hey, I know I'm analytics czar, but that means nothing to the industry. They have no legal, you can put on your LinkedIn analytics manager, analytics czar. Like you could put that to kind of help. But then that also goes back to when I like someone's answer and they have a cat for a face on Facebook, and then I put their name into Google, and then their Twitter shows a bunch of D&D stuff, which rock on D&D, but I don't know what you do, where your skills are. So I think Twitter's still relevant, that you should have a profile and show that you're involved. So one of the things that I did, again, I know we're not talking about the hiring process, but I want to talk about how employers think, right? What I said when I was at Dow Jones, the way I transformed hiring was I said, stop looking at the code. Are they active in the community? So they can go get their own help? Do in their Twitter, and by the way, are they only active now because they're looking for a job, or have they been active for years, but they haven't found the right job? And that means that's someone, if we give them a job here, like they're going to be like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like what a great place, like they get to, join like an enterprise organization. And so with the Twitter, I think Twitter's still relevant like that, where it is kind of like social proof to show, hey, I do talk with Twitter people. By the way, Brad and I met through Twitter. I DM'd him and I said, hey, can you come help me at this project?
Slide into my DMs.
Yeah, and had I not had if I just had a cat face and it said Mr. Big V, he'd be like, spam. Why is this, bro? Get out of my face. But it said Victor Ramirez, Wall Street Journal, WordPress. So remember that. Someone messaged me the other day, and it was like M Dog. His name was M Dog, and he's like, M Dog, what's up, Victor? How have you been? Do you know who's hiring? I'm like,
Who are you?
I feel like
dog?
it, and I
Great.
100% see what you're talking about. We see it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
like such resume job applying 101. Like, don't put, you know,
think
sexy
that.
dude,
You
whatever
think that.
at
Oh my gosh, your
Hotmail.
email too. Like your email should
Right.
be like more
Like it's got
professional
to look
too, right?
professional. I'm
Rad
always a
Dad
little bit hesitant when a
523.
web developer walks in the door and doesn't have their own website. I'm like, okay, you
Right.
know, you don't have any of your own website,
You can't
nothing
run
out there, not
CRA
even
and
just a
map
resume
DNS.
sitting under
Right.
a
Yeah.
.com.
Well, and
Yeah,
here's the thing
create
too, is
React app.
like there was a shift in culture, right? I mean, when we all first started out on the web, everybody was under a screen name. Like you go back and look for me on old places, you're going to see me as Peliroja LJC, because everybody was using monikers. But like Facebook came on and those monikers shifted to real names. So the thing is, if you had your .org name or whatever, Twitter, before that shift in culture, all right, maybe you're really attached to it, but it's probably time to modernize it. And on a lot of those places, you can modernize and not lose like your followers, your SEO juice. Like you can do that in most places. There's one or two where you cannot, but you can update it. You can make it more relevant. Or like if your WordPress.org profile still has, like you said, Victor, a cat, because back in the days, it was fine to have a cat. Like change it up, make it show that you are keeping up with the times. That's important.
And I want to, we got a few minutes here. I want to kind of start thinking about how our wrap up. The last piece of advice I want to give, and I'll give, each one of you an opportunity, certainly, is, set up a blog, set up a site, right? Like WordPress. If you're out there learning stuff, just blog on it, right? Like as a developer, say you dig in and find, hey, here's some new function in WordPress I didn't know existed. Probably take 10 minutes to write a quick blog post and publish it once you're ready. To talk about whatever that is. And the reason I bring this up is because back when I was first getting started, web dev was brand new, nobody knew who we were. Nobody knew me. Nobody knew anything before the books. I had my blog, and that's exactly what I was doing. As I was learning WordPress, I was being public about it and writing about it, right? About the things I was learning, things I was doing, challenges I was having, blah, blah, blah. And then Matt Mullenweg put a post out saying Wiley was looking for authors to write about WordPress. And I reached out, and the only reason I got that gig was because of my blog. That's the only thing I had to show that I could write about technical topics in a way that made somewhat sense. And I got the gig, and then 5 books later, it's still going. So had I not been doing that, there's no way I would have got that gig. Chances are web dev would not be where it's at, because we wouldn't have quite a big of his name. So it's like just doing something that I wasn't even really thinking was going to lead to anything. It was just me kind of, using WordPress. Actually helped out quite a bit with my company, with my personal, and obviously with the book. So put it out there, share it. But what last piece of advice for both of you? I've got a couple minutes here. So
diversify your outreach, whether you are a person looking for a job or a company looking for a job. Ask people who are not like you where they see opportunity or what they know, because otherwise you're either in an echo chamber as somebody applying, or you're in an echo chamber as an employer looking for somebody. Look outside your comfort zone. Ask somebody who is not entirely like you, hey, can you help us find, we're looking for this position, help us find it. Or, hey, I'm looking for a position. I know you're in a different area. Do you have any outreach, any possibility? That spreads your news more.
Yeah, my thing would be just to say, don't limit yourself to WordPress jobs. I love WordPress. And I would even say, and Brad can back me up here, I'm very skilled in WordPress, but I do not professionally in my day job work in WordPress. I work in enterprise architecture of analytics, right? But the way I got there, and I'm going to tell you right now, and I'm not going to name names, I wiped the floor with people from FANG companies. And the reason is they're so specialized. So I'm just saying, don't have imposter syndrome. They don't understand basic things like what's backend, what's front end, what's client side, what's server side. Wait, you mean you don't know WordPress? Because as WordPress people, we have to learn so much. We have to learn this all big dynamic thing. And so if you can find it, if you know SQL, go on Google, take the free BigQuery course, and then go and update your resume to no longer say WordPress developer, say SQL developer, say whatever, and you'll double your salary. And I'm sorry for anyone who hires for WordPress. That's the problem, because like we have so many people in WordPress that are sleeper hits, and if they could figure out how to transfer their skills to those big 100K jobs, they wouldn't even be in WordPress anymore. And that is a fear of me for brain drains, but for the people looking for the jobs, take your skills that you know in WordPress, SQL, React, JavaScript, jQuery, reverse search it in LinkedIn, and you'll find all these jobs you didn't even know are available to you.
Love it. Love it. Well, this is a great show. It's a lot of fun. Hopefully, anyone watching or listening got a few good tips that they can take. Definitely, I think the long and short of it is like, it's open source, and going hand in hand with putting things out there in open source is putting yourself out there a little bit, right? Even if it's getting a little uncomfortable, but there are ways to do it online. There's ways where you don't have to be in person shaking hands with everybody to get a job, right? There's a lot of opportunities out there and people want to help. So ask, get into post status, get involved, get into Twitter conversations, just get involved and good things will happen. I promise. So there's a lot of opportunities out there, even though it may not feel like it right now. But, it's not all doom and gloom in the WordPress world. There are many companies that are doing very, 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 very well.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of these big tech companies. And of course, there are some WordPress companies as well, but that's what's really taking the headlines. So stick with it. There's opportunities out there. You'll get through it. If we can help, reach out. But yeah, this was awesome. Laura, thanks for joining us. And we'll tease next week's show because this is how scheduled we are. Thank you to Laura Coronado, our producer of the show, who's really keeping us rolling and getting these things scheduled. But next Friday, March 3rd, Laura's actually going to be back, which is exciting. And we're going to have another guest, Ebony Butler, who was many of you are probably familiar with Ebony. I'm a little nervous because she's really good at live streaming. So she can critique our setup, but she was one of the core tech leads for WordPress 5.6 which was the first ever all female release lead. So we're going to be talking about an all-female non-binary release of WordPress, what that could look like, what that means. It's going to be a really fun show. So same time next Friday, March 3rd, 10 a.m. Eastern. If you can't join us live, please do watch it back and share it. We're having a lot of fun here, and we will start having more open shows too, where people can hop on and we can talk about whatever.
Oh wait, Mike Altieri, real quick, call for speakers, word count McClare. It's one of my favorites. So sorry, I didn't mean to jump in there. Yep.
Which
Laura,
is
you're
actually
not
what I'm doing
that,
for the
you?
rest. Yeah, right. Which is hilarious, which is what I'm working on the rest of the day, because this is our 5 for the Future day. That's what I'm doing the rest of the day, is speaker and sponsor outreach.
Yeah, and in terms of events, I'm actually going to be at WordCamp Phoenix with Laura. We just can't get enough of hanging out with each other, apparently. Laura's speaking, right? You're speaking at WordCamp Phoenix at the end of March.
I'm speaking at WordCamp Phoenix, and it is a business.
Now I'm getting FOMO. Everyone's going but me. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe you should go. We could do some live stuff. But either way, if you're going to be at WordCamp Phoenix, I'll be out there. Laura will be out there. Maybe we can convince Victor. It'd be great to see everybody or anyone. So thanks for tuning in. Again, follow the hashtag WP Friday. We got some links we put out there. So we appreciate everybody joining us. Smash that subscribe button.
Smash the subscribe.
We'll see you on the next show. Thanks, everybody. Have a great Friday and a great weekend.
Bye, all.